All right, so this is going to be a new video to show you how to add the structural elements to the commercial project. So you should have already watched the overview on how the phases work and downloaded the RVT file that's called Commercial 2020 RVT from the module. And once you open that, you should have some levels here to work with. So the levels that we're going to start off with is the level 1 existing. We're just going to take a look at what's there. What we have is a grid, a column grid for columns going in spaced at 10 feet apart in the left to right direction, and then the columns have been labeled with A through C from on the right hand side. So we're actually going to get rid of these two column grids here, because what I decided to do is remove the columns from inside the wall. But actually it's locating a beam. So there will be a beam that's supporting the structure. The beam will be resting on the CMU block wall, but the CMU block wall will say is supporting the beam. So we're going to add those elements to this. So just to show you how to create a structural grid, you can create a grid by using the grid tool, and you're just drawing lines that represent where the columns are going to go in both directions. So you typically want to label those 1 through whatever in one direction, and I can't label that 1. We'll say it's 1A or 1. And then in this direction, you're going to label it in as letters. So starting with E I think we can start with D. And then once you create additional columns, each one of the column bubbles in this direction would be a number system. This would be a letter. And then where those intersect is where you can place a column. So we'll go to structural columns, and I'll just put a column right there at the intersection. What's nice about this is if I decide to move this column grid, the column goes with it. So setting up a column grid like this prior to setting up your columns, it makes a lot of sense. So you're going to be placing your columns at the intersections of these column grids. And column grids are really easy to lay out. I have actually used them without columns before, just to be able to locate things, make it easier to locate things I can snap to. Instead of using it as a column grid, for instance, you could use it as just a reference line. So let's go ahead and place some elements. So we're on level 1 existing. We have level 2 existing, and each one of these views have been set up to be set to existing, show all. Roof existing, and I have a section view for us to work with. And in the section view, we have some layers set up: level 1, level 2, top of beam level 2, there's level 2 and top of beam level 2, top of beam level 3 for your roof level, and then roof. So maybe I'm going to actually rename this top of beam roof. So it's the same kind of format that we've been using for our levels. So top of beam roof makes more sense because this is relative to level 2. I'm just going to move these apart a little bit so we can read them. So what's going to happen is we're going to add some structure. So we're going to add some trusses. Then on top of that, we're going to add a concrete deck. And then on the roof section, we're going to add trusses. And then we're going to eventually be adding some tapered insulation. So the top of the roof ends up being where the actual top of the roof will be once this is all done, and the tapered insulation will be added after the fact. So I probably will record that in a separate video so that you can just see how to add the structure first, and then we can add those pieces afterwards. So once you have that set up, or once you kind of gotten yourself familiar with where things are, you're going to want to make your way to level 1. And let's add the concrete floor system to level 1. So we'll go into architecture and just regular floor system this time. And this is going to be a 4-inch concrete floor. If you don't have a 4-inch concrete floor, look for a regular concrete floor. If you don't have that, then we can go to generic, edit type, duplicate it, call this 4-inch concrete. And we can change the function to interior, exterior here. Let's leave that as interior because it's an interior slab. And you can change the floor system. Yeah, I guess we just changed the floor system there. And then let's change this structural type from a generic category to a 4-inch slab. So I want concrete cast in place. And then I want to make that 4 inches. You know what? For commercial, it would probably be 5 inches. So I'm going to make that 5 inches to make it a little bit more realistic for a commercial project. So let's rename this 5 inches. Okay, so now I'm just going to pick my walls to define that concrete system and just hit the green check box. Don't attach. And then I'm going to build my foundation walls underneath this. So we're going to go back to the wall system. And I want to pick foundation wall from the list. There's a foundation wall, concrete. And I'll just keep that at 12 inches. And I want that to follow the outline of the existing walls. So I'm just going to use the pick line tool. And I want this to be not on wall center line, but finish face exterior. And the levels should be level 1. We'll leave that at level 1, -12 for now. Actually, let's make it -5. Because this is just going to be a frost wall. So we want to put that wall in there so that it's going in the right direction. And just ignore the warnings that you can't see these walls. It's because we're not seeing those walls from this level. You go to the 3D view, however, then you can see them. You can see that they've been placed so that they're aligned with the exterior walls. And then we just want to check to make sure that these were put on the right phase. So I'm just going to click on one, select all instances and entire project, and make sure that they're placed on the correct phase existing, which is exactly what we want. And then lastly, let's put some footing underneath that. So we're going to go into structure, wall footing, and let's leave this at the 36 by 12 because remember this is all commercial size stuff. So we'll just put that wider spread footing underneath there. And now we have the foundational structural existing that's been added. Let's go to level 2. So we go to level 2, and I want to create a structural beam system that's holding up. It's basically going to be a series of floor joists that's going to hold up the floor level. So we will go to a beam system, which is this right here. And I've already preloaded some stuff for you, but if you didn't have what you needed, what you're looking for is, when you're creating a beam system, you're going to set the spacing of the beam system. You're going to set the beam type. If the beam type you were looking for was not in this list, then you kind of back up a little bit. I'm going to hit the X to get out of here. Go into the beams, and you can load a whole bunch of different families from there. So if we go into our structural framing and go into steel, for instance, these are all the different types of floor beams we could load into the project to use within a beam system or to use as an individual beam where we needed to. And so I've loaded up the LH series structural floor joists, and I've also loaded, I think, the HP bearing pile or something like, oh no, I loaded a column, and the W joists that are already in here we used as beams on the outside walls. So I already have those things loaded, but if you had to load something new, that's how you would load it. And, you know, just like anything, if we wanted to pick this, for instance, a double angle for a beam, hit open, you're either going to get an individual beam or you're going to have a list that you can pick from as a family catalog. So I've already loaded those things for you. So if you go into your beam system, on both sides of these, we're going to use the same size floor joists. But we're going to use some different spacing. So notice the span is a little bit different. It's a shorter on this side than it is on that side. So on this side, the joists are going to be spaced closer together. And on this side, they're going to be a little bit further apart. And I'm just making this up. By no means is this the exact structural, meeting structural requirements, but it's just to show you how to do this. So I'm setting the layout rule to fixed distance of 6 feet. And then I'm going to use this rectangle tool right here. And I am going to use the column grid to help me place the floor joist. So I want to place the column grid at the corner, using the corner of the column grid rather, and then the intersection of the column grid at B, so that these K-series, or I shouldn't say K, LH series joists will be framed this way. Now these two lines that are showing up here are indicating which direction those floor joists are going to span in. I don't want them spanning this way. I want them spanning in the same direction that the columns are going in. So we change our beam direction. You can pick either one of these lines here on this side or that side. Now the beams are going to span in that direction. And when I hit the green checkbox, you're going to get all of the beams located with their labels. And then if you wanted to see what that looked like in a 3D view, you can look at your 3D view. You can see the K-series or LH series trusses have been located in the correct location above our first floor system. Let's go to the section view so you can see what I've got set up for the section view. The section view is actually a structural section. So the walls on the either end have been set to be structural walls. You can turn off whether they're structural or not. If you turn off, make a wall not structural, it won't show up in a structural section. Let's see if I can bring that back. There we go. So the wall, notice the wall in the center is not structural, because what we're going to be putting there are some columns that will hold up both of these trusses on either side. So we do need to take this floor system that we have here, and we're going to associate it with the correct level. So I'm going to do that by going into my level 2 existing, and I want to be able to tab through and select the entire beam system. It will highlight properly once we get to it. There it is. So you want that entire beam system. I'm going to edit the work plane, and I'm actually going to put it at top of level 2 with a 5-inch offset. And you'll see why I do this here. So we look at that 5-inch offset and go back to the section. This is going to rest directly on top of our beam and give us room from here to here to put in our finished floor that's going to sit on top of that K-series structure. I keep calling it K-series because that's the old name for it. It's an LH series trusses. So let's go back to our level 2 existing. We're just using this to place it, and then we're moving it to the correct work plane. We'll go back to beam systems. I'm going to change my fixed spacing to 4 feet instead, and then use the same rectangle tool to place the beam system on the other side. And check to see which direction the span is going in. Change the beam direction, and then hit the green checkbox. So when we go back to that section view, you'll see that these floor trusses are a little bit higher because we haven't offset them yet. Once we put the beam in here, we want this pad right here to be resting directly on the beam. So we want to go back to that level 2 existing. And we could have done that all at once. I just am showing you this in steps so you can see it. So let's change that elevation to -5 inches. And actually we want the elevation and the edit work plane to be not level 2, but the level 2 beam. and we want it to be 5 inches up, sorry. So let's go back to the section view, and now these are lined right up. And we have our floor system for our second floor. So now let's go to our second floor and create our floor system, structural floor system. So notice I'm under the structure tab. If I click on floor, I want this to be 3-inch lightweight concrete on 2-inch metal deck. So that's going to make that a 5-inch floor. And this time I'm going to create that floor system based off of the wall positions. So we'll click on each one of the walls. This will link the floor system to the wall system. And I think that automatically lined up with where the actual beams are anyway, and then we'll hit the green checkbox. And we can join geometry, that's fine. Now let's go to our 3D section, or I mean our section view, and you can see everything's lining up perfectly now. So we have our floor system that's going to eventually rest on our beam. We'll put our beams in here in a minute. And then we have our floor deck. So I'm going to let you figure out how to place the roof system up here based off of using top of beam and getting things to line up. And then there will be a video that shows you how to create the insulation. But exactly the same process that we use to place this framing here, I'd like you to use for the roof system. You can use the same spacing, the same series of trusses, just to get a chance to do it on your own. So next we're just going to place these beams, and then I'll stop this recording and we'll do the roof framing. So let's go to level 2 existing, and I want to create the beam that's going down the center here and at the ends. Actually, we don't need the beam. We can have the trusses fall directly on top of the CMU block wall, for example. So we're just going to put the beam in the middle. So I'm going to go to the beam, and we're just going to use this W shape 21 by 44. If that was too big or you wanted a different size, remember we could load a new family. Okay. So I'm just going to place this right on top using the same grid for our column grid, making sure I'm intersecting with those, and it's going to create that beam. We go into the 3D view. I need to see the beam is kind of hidden because it's below. So let's go to the section actually. There it is. So there's our beam. And I just want to make sure the beam is attached to the correct level. So I'm just going to change Edit Work Plane to top of beam level 2. And that should put that beam in the correct location, so it's supporting now the floor joists. And I want that same exact beam to be up here in the roof system, supporting our roof trusses as well. And you'll have your structural elements in place. So the last step that we're going to do in this video is show you how to put the columns underneath that beam. So I'm going to go to level 1 this time. And this wall right here is actually not a structural wall because there's going to be columns inside this wall at the intersections of each one of these column grids. And again, I loaded the columns already for you, but if you go into columns and you were not happy with the choices you had here, you can load additional families. The difference is you would go to the structural columns category and load the column system that you want, concrete, light gauge steel, precast concrete, steel, and wood. Steel is where I loaded an HP, let me see here. No, I think I did a double C channel column for this project. And I got one of the smaller ones that will fit inside of the wall system. So that's the column I'm using. And we would start off by putting a column at these intersections. And make sure you're lining it up with, now that's going to be a problem right there where that door is. We're going to fix it. I think some of these columns too didn't land right where they were supposed to. So I'm going to go back and make sure that they landed where they were supposed to right on the column grid. in the last, you remember the CMU block wall is going to be holding up a lot of stuff, so we don't have to put the columns in the wall. So this column didn't land where it was supposed to, so just select it, move it, and let's align it with the column grid. Select that column. Sometimes it's hard to select them. There we go. And move that so that the center of the column is at the column grid. And I think once you move it right on the intersection, it kind of locks itself to that column. Now, the problem here is we got a column right in the center of a door. So I'm going to let you move that to either to the left or to the right. That's okay. You can make that change. We want that column to be just outside of that door system. So I'm going to move it that way. I think that makes sense to offset that door on that side, maybe center it between the column and the wall. That's the only place it's problematic. Once we get into editing and making changes to this in phases, we're going to have to work around the columns, which is fine. But you're allowed to make little changes like that if you see something that you need to fix. So back to our section view, we now have all of our column information. Columns, though, right now are not quite hitting the bottom of the beam. So let's find out what the size of our beam is. We'll do a measurement. Looks like it's 1'9½", somewhere around there. So if I select these columns and I want to select all instances in the entire project, and they're going from level 1 to level 1, 9 feet. So I'm going to have them go to top of beam level 2. And that's going to put them way at the top here, but then we're going to put in an offset of -1'9½". And that should put the beams right where they're supposed to be. Maybe it's a little bit more than 9.5. Let's try 9 3/5/8. Oops. Maybe it's -10. -1'10". All right, -1'9". Looks like it's close enough. And that's where I'm going to stop right there. We now have, if we go to the 3D view, I'm just going to type in VV and just temporarily shut off all the walls so that you can see the structural. So we have our concrete floor system. We have our structural holding up our floor. You're going to be creating the roof system and what else? Yeah, oh, and the insulation. And I'll show you how to, and then I will show you how to add the insulation in the next video.